demonic half-beast Wendigo, a mythological creature explained. How about we begin this video by telling you all a story. We know there are plenty of narratives that revolve around this creature of the night. However, there is this one particular story that goes way back to the year 1878. It revolves around a Native American who, post getting cast out of the Cree tribe, had no other option but to take shelter in the woods along with his family. Some time passed by and the man was seen turning up in a nearby city looking rather shrunken and a bit desperate. Apparently his entire family had passed away due to starvation. Of course, the people of the town did not accept his version of the truth, and they ended up probing deeper into the matter by calling in the authorities. But what they discovered was a lot more than just a horrific sight. The remnants of his family, the wife and his children to be more precise, were found disseminated all over the ground. That's not all. The bodies were also somewhat devoured. No wonder the man was sentenced to death and was hanged. But before he died, he did say that it was the Wendigo that had possessed him and made him slaughter his entire family. Spooky, right? Well, we've just begun. The concept of the Wendigo became further popular in the year 1910, post Algernon Blackwood's novella The Wendigo. Those who have read this will agree with us when we tell you that this novel is conclusively one of the most iconic horror stories that there are in history. To the ones who have no clue, it tells us a story of 4 men on a moose hunting trip in the wilderness. With the group splitting up into 2 hunting parties, the guide of one of the groups starts behaving quite oddly, so much so that he starts to hallucinate about the Wendigo. Agreed that the story isn't very expressive, but it successfully creates that perfect atmosphere of suspense and dread. Since then, there have been numerous references of the Wendigo. In cases of books, we have H.P. Lovecraft's The Cthulhu Mythos, Stephen King's Pet Sematary, Michael Scott's The Magician, The Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flame, and Javier Torres de Ugarte's The Wendigo. While in the world of television, we have had series such as Supernatural and Hannibal having references to the Wendigo. Movies have been made along similar lines with references to the Wendigo, such as the 2013 American Western flick The Lone Ranger. Also, it would be a total sin to miss out on the video games here because clearly they have been at least on par with the media. It's vital that we mention Until Dawn and Fallout 76 because gamers know exactly what we're talking about. So gear yourself up for today's video. We're going to be talking about the demonic half-beast Wendigo and exploring this mythological creature in detail. You're in for a major treat. Let's get started.
Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
What is a Wendigo? Sometimes addressed as sinister supernatural beings of great spiritual power with a never-ending desire to eat. Everyone knows Wendigos as mythological creatures strongly associated with all things cold, such as the winter, the north, and things like famine and starvation. As per depiction of the creature by Legends of America, the Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation, its desiccated skin pulled tautly over its bones, with its bones pushing out against its skin, its complexion the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets. The Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton, recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered and bloody. Its body was unclean and suffering from suppurations of the flesh, giving off a strange and eerie odor of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption. At times known as a Wendigo, Wendigo, and Witico, amongst other names, the Wendigo is entirely a North American creature. In fact, tales revolving around this mythological beast originated amongst the Native American and Canadian tribes. As a matter of fact, if you believe in the Native American folktales, the first Wendigo was actually a warrior who made a deal with the devil. Well, apparently, the warrior surrendered his soul as a barter for formidable skills and stature to win against his opponents, and in the process save his tribe. But after the war was over, the triumphant warrior, and currently a full-time Wendigo, was exiled from his tribe and coerced to live as a pariah. To top things, he was also damned with cannibalistic cravings. Imagine a man-beast, one that brags a towering height of 15 feet, has an exceedingly malnourished body, a pair of massive glowing eyes, fangs like a dog, a very long tongue, and no lips. Add to this a rotten gray-hued skin on top of its skeletal body structure, antlers, and dagger-like talons. Yes, that will be a Wendigo who is always in the mood to eat. It does not matter the amount of human flesh that it has devoured. It is completely obsessed with hunting for new victims. Well, in fact, according to legend, Wendigo grows bigger in size each time it consumes human flesh, and in proportion to the flesh it eats. For instance, devouring, say, about a 150-pound human would make their body grow that much in proportion. People who claim to have encountered this creature at times address it as a relative of Bigfoot, and there are some who have often compared the Wendigo to a werewolf. In plain and simple words, you would really not want to run into this creature. Are Wendigos excellent hunters? Right from being resistant to severe weather conditions, being unusually strong, to having augmented senses, there are no second thoughts about Wendigos being exceptional hunters. To top things off, they are also quite capable of curing their bodies as well as regenerate whenever they are injured. That's not even all. The high point is that they are known for their ability to mimic human voices calling for help. Creepy, right? There's more to it. Apparently, it is kind of impossible to get away from a Wendigo. By now, we all know that they are kind of hunters by nature, which means they are exceedingly fast and will literally let nothing come in the way of their everlasting hunger. Say, even if you did manage to escape one, the sole fact that you encountered a Wendigo is bound to leave you sort of mentally deranged for the rest of your life. According to legend, a Wendigo would gradually, and mind you very strategically, drive its prey insane. When we say strategically, we mean it would start luring its victims away by releasing a particular smell that only its victims can sniff in the first place. This will keep its victims up and not allow them to get any bit of sleep, and instead have nightmares that will eventually make them lose their sanity. In case you did not know this, Wendigos are also capable of furtively stalking its prey for prolonged periods. They can even pick up on panicked heartbeats from literally miles away. And then there is also the fact that they can manipulate weather conditions and simply call upon the darkness even when it's daytime. Please do not be complacent and ignore the scent thinking that if you are inside your home you are safe. When it comes to Wendigos, they are very much capable of unlocking doors and entering your home. Yes, you heard that right. Once they enter, they will kill you, of course, eat you to be more specific, and then change the whole place into Wendigo residences for hibernation. And did we fail to mention that they can hibernate for years? Well, now you know. How does a person become a Wendigo? If myths are to be believed, then there are two ways how a person can turn into a Wendigo. The first is obviously if a person comes into contact with one and does so for a longer duration. The second is if a person devours human flesh. The Native Americans used to believe that if one consumes human flesh, and it does not matter if one is doing so to endure the severe winter conditions, then that leads to the person transforming into a Wendigo. There's also a different version to this myth that says human beings who are very greedy can also transform into Wendigos. Can a person be freed from the Wendigo Curse? Do you really want to know if a person can be saved from the Wendigo Curse? Well, as far as we know, death happens to be the only way to save the soul of a human being from the curse. It is said that the person who transformed into a Wendigo kind of remains their former self inside, even post the transformation, residing mostly around the heart area. And to save a person from the curse, the creature as well as the person inside have to both be killed. We are quite sure this wasn't the answer that you were looking for, but it is the truth. But seldom have we heard of tales where apparently the person under the curse was rescued and only the Wendigo was killed. But that's very rare. In fact, hardly ever the case. You will be shocked to know that the people of Assiniboine, Ojibwe, and Cree tribes carried out ritual dances that featured Wendigos as a means to keep off the evil spirits, as well as emphasize the significance of unity and support between people during severe weather conditions, and remind them of the threat. How to kill a Wendigo. There are several versions to it. Some say that a Wendigo can be slayed by burning. Some are of the opinion that Wendigos can be killed by using silver weapons. Mind you, an injured Wendigo is very much capable of regenerating itself. Therefore, what one needs to do is make use of silver weapons such as silver bullets, silver blades, and even stakes for that matter, and aim at the heart. Don't make the blunder of thinking that is the end to it. Post stabbing the Wendigo in the heart, one has to break the heart into pieces, put the pieces in a silver chest, and have it buried in a church cemetery. As for the remaining Wendigo, one must sever it using a silver-plated axe. Even a silver knife works for that matter. Next, it needs to be salted, burned, and finally have the ashes scattered into the winds. It is important to remember that if you miss a single step, you will find the Wendigo reviving itself, hunting you down and meeting an unimaginably painful death. We are pretty sure no one wants that. Are Wendigo stories real or myth? We are all quite acquainted with the severity of the climate conditions, especially in Canada as well as the US Great Lakes. So if one were to think that the members of the Native American tribes living there resorted to cannibalism just in order to survive, it would not be entirely wrong. After all, they were more than often troubled by the exceeding levels of coldness and hunger. Also, this is the principal area where the Wendigo is believed to roam through the backwoods. There have been many tales of the Wendigo that have served as warning stories, mainly to put a stop to those who even in their slightest minds would be drawn towards cannibalism, given the long winters and scarcity of food. Taking other native folklores into consideration, there was a time when the Wendigo faded into obscurity as the tribe's cultures were brought down and eventually made a part of the wider Canadian society. However, in the year 1907, a certain series of events secured the Wendigo back in history. In fact, there was a member of the Cree tribe of the northwestern Ontario called Jack Fiddler, who told a Methodist minister about his skill to win against the Wendigos. Of course, word started to spread around like wildfire. Jack Fiddler, along with his brother Joseph, were eventually arrested and imprisoned for killing a woman even before she altered. It is reported that Jack managed to flee and hanged himself while Joseph passed away in prison days before he would have been set out on appeal. While the Fiddler killings did add integrity to the notion that Wendigos very much existed, let's not disregard the fact that they also did point towards a myth, one that sort of evolved from the eradication of physical or mental illness. Deeper significance of Wendigo stories. Right from Stephen King's Pet Sematary to Brian Fuller's psychological horror thriller TV series Hannibal, the flesh-eating image of the Wendigo is often introduced in a manner way different than in its original cultural context, one where it carries unfathomable more significance. In fact, the newest addition to the listing of Wendigo tales happened to be Scott Cooper's 2021 supernatural horror flick Antlers, one where a school teacher doubts that one of her students is suffering from personal problems back at home, oblivious to the fact that the student is sheltering a perilous entity in his house. Putting stress on the Algonquian traditions, the Wendigo usually emerges through a particular set of situations that are distinctive to different tribal groupings. If we take a look at most of these traditions, the Wendigo is shown to be human in origin, then becomes a monster through a course that results either from certain acts of starvation-induced cannibalism or from the possession by a spirit. In the course of the transformation from human to Wendigo, the person has on display escalating levels of self-centeredness, vehemence, appetite, and greed, the latter specifically for human flesh. The stories aren't shared just for entertainment purposes, but to fortify the communal values that permit the communities in which the practices take place to live well with one another and within their environments. Is the Wendigo still out there in the woods? If one takes into consideration the supposed Wendigo sightings between the time period of the 1800s and 1920s, then a few reports of the demonic half-beast, mythological creature may come to the surface since then. Recently, in 2019, inexplicable howlings in the Canadian wilderness did lead some to inquire if they were actually caused by the notorious man-beast or not. In fact, there was a hiker who was quite sure that he had never heard anything like it before. You will be more than fascinated to know that there are many lakes today that have been named especially after the mythological creature. For instance, there is Lake Wendigo in Minnesota and also a Wendigo Lake in Wisconsin. And for those who believe that the Wendigo is for real, they are pretty sure that the creature is still out there in the woods, knowing that beneath that petrifying, flesh-eating demon lays a human who was once a hungry hunter.
And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.